Hi and welcome to Candyfloss Crochet. Today I'm going to show you how to do a 3-coloured shell stitch. So I've done a sample piece in just one colour just so you can get a feel for how it works up. And as you can see, it's quite a pretty stitch to use. And just so you can see what it looks like in 3 colours, I think it's more effective if you do it in 3 colours. I've done this one in Stylecraft Special DK using white, silver and grey, and I think it's a lot more effective to see the shell shapes than on the one colour. But today we're going to do it in 3 colours so I can show you how to change colour yarns as you work through the stitch, but you can do it in one colour if you wanted. So I just wanted to show you both. So what you will need for this tutorial is a 4mm crochet hook, a darning needle because you will have quite a few ends to sew in, some stitch markers. That you won't need them for every round, but to start off with they might be helpful to use. I'm going to use my 3 colours. I'm using this special Stylecraft Special DK in Sherbet. I've also got same makes Stylecraft Special DK in Spring Green and Lemon. Okay, now let's get started. I'm going to start off with my Sherbet colour and my 4mm hook, and I'm going to create a slip knot. Do this any way that works for you. Now with this pattern, to make the pattern work, you need to chain in multiples of 6 plus an extra 2, so 1 for each end, which basically for your turning. So if you go ahead and chain 20, well let's start with 24 plus 1 plus 1. Okay, so 26 chains that you need to do. So in order to do a chain, you're yarning over and you pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. So it's a standard chain. And if you want to meet me back when you've got to 24 plus 2, so 26 chains, you meet me back there and we'll start our first row. Okay, so you should now have 24 plus 2, so 26 chains on your hook. And for your first row, you need to put a DC, a double crochet, into the second chain from your hook. So just to be clear, you don't count this chain on your hook. Your first one's here with the loop through, and that's your second one. And that's a DC, which is a UK terms, or a single crochet if you're in America. So to do a double crochet, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. That's your first stitch, and that's a double crochet. You now need to skip 2, so 1, 2, and in the next one you do a shell stitch. Okay, so shell stitch is relatively simple. You're doing 5 trebles into the same chain space. So a treble is yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2. Do that one again. So yarn over, and you're going into that same space into here. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's 2. Yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2. So I've done 3 trebles so far. I'll do 2 more. And 2. Okay. So you now got to skip 2 again. So make sure you're clear. You've gone into this stitch here because you can see you've got a nice big hole now. This is your next one. This is the next one again. So we're going into this one here, skipping 2, and I want you to work a DC now into that one. So basically what you're going to do is anchor this one down. So no yarning over, just straight in, yarn over, pull through, 2 on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2. And that creates your first shell. It basically anchors it back down. Now you're going to skip 2 again. So 1, 2, and you're going to work 5 trebles or another shell stitch into the next one. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. and you're doing 5 treble crochets, or in the US that's a double crochet, into this 1 chain space. Last one, so yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So I've now created another shell. I'm going to skip 2 again, so 1, 2, and I'm going to anchor my shell down with a DC, a double crochet. And that's anchored that one down, so I'm getting more of a straight line now, as you can see. Skip 2 again, so 1, 2. Let's find that one, 1, 2. And I'm sorry, I'm doing a treble into that one, so I'm doing another shell. So that's 1, 2, 3, some more yarn, 4, and 5. So that's my 3rd shell. Need to anchor that one down, so I need to skip 2. So 1, 2. They're a bit harder to see these, so I'm just going to point them out for you. So there's one there. There's the next one. So I'm going into this one here. I'm going to anchor that one down with a double crochet. I'm going to skip 2 again. So 1, 2, and I'm going to do another shell stitch, which is 5 trebles into the same stitch. 2, 3. I've got a knot in my yarn. Sorry about that. So I've done 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Skip 2, 1, 2, last chain now. So I'm skipping 2, skipping this one, skipping this one. I'm on my last stitch now, and you should be on the same one. You can anchor that fan down again, that shell, with a double crochet. And there you have your first row. So you should have 4 lots of shells, and in between them, which is quite important to remember, is your double crochet. So if you wanted to, at this point, you can make sure you pull out your shells and just put a stitch marker into that middle bit, because you're going to be working into those stitches on the next round, and sometimes it's easier if they're marked. You don't have to do this. I think they're quite easy to find, but if you're struggling to find them, it might be just as easy to pop your stitch markers in to the dip in between. That's your DC that you did between your shells. Okay, so that is row 1. Okay, at this point you need to change your yarn. Okay, so I am going to go on to my spring green yarn now, if I can find the end. There he is. And I'm going to chain 3 with this one. So what I tend to do when I'm changing colour, so if you were just repeating your colour yarn, at this point you would chain 3 and you'd turn your work. Okay, as I'm going to change colours, I'm going to take that all the way back down to my very last stitch with my blue or the sherbet. I'm going to do a DC into here, so I insert hook, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on the hook. Just going to drop that to one side. I'm going to pick up my spring green and hold on to it at the back and finish that stitch. So yarning over, I'm going to finish that DC stitch with my new colour, but you've got to hold on to it, pull it through. Then I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'm ready to change colour now. I'm ready to turn. Just pull on those ends, and at this point you can snip off your first colour. Okay, so I'll just find my little scissors. Just going to snip that one off. And as you can tell, you're going to have your darning needle. You're going to need to weave in all these ends. So I've now changed colour. Okay, so you've chained your 3. You can turn your work. You've snipped off your end, and you're now going to work 2 trebles. So this chain 3 counts as a treble, and you're going to work 2 more trebles into that DC space. So yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, 1 more into the same space. So you've got your 3 trebles in here. Okay, you now need to anchor those 3 trebles down, and you need to find the center of your previous fan. So this is the highest point, so it's probably easier if you can see there. So that will be the center of this fan. So that's the stitch that I want to go into next. So I need to anchor down this half a fan that I've created here with a DC into that center one. And now we're going to jump straight across to the stitch marker. So into this space here, which was the DC of the previous round, you're going to work a shell, which is 5 trebles into that space. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out because it's served its purpose now. Yarn over, insert, and work a treble. And do that 4 more times, so 5 in total. 3, 4 and 5. Okay, our next stitch is to find the middle one again and anchor this one down. So we want to anchor it to the middle of our shell in the previous round with a DC, with a double crochet. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2. So as you can see, we're starting to sort of fill in the gaps as we go along now. Now we've got to our next stitch marker, which is the double crochet of the previous round between the 2 shells. Just going to pop that one out. And I'm going to work a shell into that one, which is 5 trebles into the same stitch. That's 2, 3, 4, and 5. Go to the top of the next shell and do a DC into that one to anchor the previous shell down. And we're on our last stitch marker now. So that is the gap between the 2. Hopefully you can see quite clearly where that stitch is. So this is the top of your treble here, and this is the top of the treble on the other side. If I pull it apart slightly, you can see that there's 2 holes at the top there, your 2 V's, and I'm going into the double crochet that we did in the middle to anchor that down, and that's where my next shell needs to go. So yarning over, insert. Make sure you get both loops when you go through. You don't want to just pick up one loop because it will pull the stitch. And you're working another shell in here, so that's 3, 4 and 5. Okay, I'm on my last shell now, so as before, I'm going to anchor the previous shell that we just done down with a DC into the very top of that shell, and we've come to our very last stitch now. So you've worked all the way across. So just to recap, we did a chain 3 and then 2 trebles, then a DC in the top of the previous shell, a shell into the DC, DC in the top, shell, DC, shell, and we're back into the top. We're on our last part of it now. You've done your last DC into the top, and now you need to do 3 trebles to finish it off into the last DC. So you find your last stitch, which is here, and you're going to work 3 trebles to balance out your ends. 2. And then when you get to the last one, stop halfway through because we want to change colour again. So normally, if you pause at this point, and I'll just show you, normally if you were doing a consistent same colour, you would do your 3 trebles at that point, and that just finishes off that round. But because we want to change colour, so on this one, that's exactly what I did there. I worked my last 3 trebles before I move on to my next round. But when you're changing colour, and I want to change to the lemon now, let's find my end for the lemon. There he is. So I've got my lemon into play now. Let's take the sherbet out the way. And like we did on the previous round, when you're changing colour, I always change colour halfway through a stitch. So I've got one more treble to do. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on your hook. At that point, drop your colour that you're currently on, pick up your new colour. So I'm using lemon now. And I hold it at the back and I finish off that stitch. I yarn over, grab hold of the ends so that they don't pull apart, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. I've worked my last one. I can drop my green now and snip off the end of the green. And I finished row 2. So you've now completed 2 rows of your triple. What you might need to do is sew these ends in. It makes good practice really to sew your ends in as you go so that they don't unravel. It's up to you how often you do it. But I try and get into the habit of when I put my work down at the end of the day, then I try and sew in the ends as I go. That way I can, I don't have a massive amount of sewing ends in at the end of the project. Alternatively, if you're worried that maybe you haven't got it quite right, if you don't sew them in, it makes it a lot easier to frog it and to start again. So we're now on the lemon and we're on row 3. We've changed colour. I want you to chain 1 and turn and put 1 double crochet into the first treble, so not the turning chain. So this is our turning chain, which is here. We don't want to go into this one, we want to go into the first treble. So I'm going to work 1 DC, so let's insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. 1 DC into the first one, and then we're going to do our shells into the base between them again. So this is into the DC space in between, so this is in here. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So we're working 5 trebles into the double crochet space, so the gap between the shells of the previous round. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want 1 more. Then we're repeating the pattern again, so finding the top of the shell of the previous round. So it's 1, 2, 3 in, and you DC to anchor down your shell. Find the gap between, so that's the top of this treble, that's the top of this treble, that's my DC. And I'm going to work another shell into that space. 2, 3, 4, and 1 more. 5. Okay, now you need to find the top of your shell from below and put a DC into that one. And at this point, if you wanted to, you could carry on, just pop in your stitch markers into that one. If that makes it easier for you to find it in future rounds as you go along. But I think it's quite clear once you get to this point, especially when you're working in different colours, it's quite easy to see the gaps of where they are. Whereas when you're in one colour, it's a little bit hard. You can see it here. You can see that you've done your shell all the way across. This is your last treble. This is your top of the last treble. This is a DC stitch. And this is the top of the next one. So if I was put my stitch marker in, I would be putting it in that one there, and that's saying I'm going to put my double crochet in here, then I'm going to work a shell in here, double crochet in here, work a shell in the dip. Just makes it a little bit easier until you get used to finding those stitches. So the next one we're going to do, so this is the top of the treble, this is top of the other treble, I'm going to do a shell into the DC in the middle. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Find the middle of your shell and put a DC in that one just to anchor it down. Now you're going into the DC in the next one and working your last shell. So that's 5 trebles into the space in between the previous shells. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is my 5th one. Now you need to anchor that one down, so you've worked all the way across and you've done a last DC in the top of the turning chain. So you need to find your turning chain and you're working a double crochet into the top of that one just to anchor that last shell down and give you a nice straight edge. And that's the end of row 3. When you turn in now, you're going to turn and repeat rows 2 and 3 all the way along. So the next colour I would use obviously is a sherbet, but you could change colours every single time, you go along. So for row 2, if I was staying with the same colour, I'll be chaining 3, turning my work. I'm going to work 2 trebles into that one. Then I'm going to anchor that down. So I've done sort of half a shell, which pulls it in. You can see within the green below, if I anchor that one down, it pulls it in. So if I go back now and I'll just change colour so you can see. So remember, when you change colour, you do half a stitch. So I'm doing a double crochet, so I'm inserting my hook, yarn over, pulling through. I'm going to drop the lemon. I'm going to bring my sherbet back into play. Yarn over, I'm going to hold it in place here, and then I'm going to pinch it so I can move my hook and finish a stitch. Pull through, and then we're chaining 3. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to turn my work. There's a lot of ends now. Let me cut off my lemon again to limit the ends. I've chained 3, I've turned, and I'm going to do 2 more trebles into the base of that stitch, into that turning chain, which gives me sort of a half shell. I'm going to anchor it into the top with a double crochet. Some more yarn. Find my middle stitch. So this is the top of the treble, this is the top of a treble. I'm going to go in here and work a shell. So that's 5 trebles into that dip. Lost count now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 more, 5. So we're working row 2 again. Now we're going to find the top of our previous shell and put in a double crochet to anchor that one down. And this one I've got my stitch marker in to tell me where I'm doing the next stitch. Take that out and do a shell into that one, which is 5 trebles. 2, 3, 4, 5. Go to the top of the next shell group and put a DC in, which anchors down your previous shell. Find the middle of the gap and work another shell. Okay, got my last lemon shell here, which I'm going to use the top of that one to anchor down the one I've just done. and we're at the end of it now. So at the very end you're doing repeat to the last one, and then you're doing 3 trebles into the last DC. So you need to find your last stitch. 1, 2 and 3, and that's your next row. So let me just turn it back over to the front. Okay, so you've now completed row 1, 2, 3 and back to 2. So you're always going forward now, going to repeat row 2 and 3, and as you can see, row 2 starts off with half shells with 3, so a turning chain and 2, and ending on 3. And the row 3 starts and ends with a double crochet at the end of it. So as you can see, you've got them. So at the moment it looks a bit bent, but it will pull out once you start blocking it. So I'll just run through that again. So row 1, you're doing your chains of multiples of 6 plus 2 extra for your turning chain. You're working a double crochet into the second chain from the hook, skipping 2, then working a shell into the next one, skip 2, then a DC, and so on all the way along. With row 2, you can change colour at this point if you wanted to, or you can carry on with the same colour if you just wanted it all in the same colour, same as this one. So with row 2, you're starting off with a chain of 3, and then you're doing your DC into the top of the previous chain, then your shell, DC, shell, DC, shell, DC, and ending with 3 trebles into the last one. When you're turning, you're doing a chain 1, a DC into the first treble, then you're doing your shell in the middle, DC shell, DC shell, DC shell all the way along, ending on your last one working a DC into the turning chain of the previous round. So I'm hoping that makes sense. It's quite an effective pattern to use. You can change colour as often as you like, so you can do it every row and you can have multiple colours. You could do something similar to what I've done here, where I've used 3 colours. I think that's quite an effective pattern, or you can use as many as you like. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any questions, please let me know. If you want to see any more tutorials that I'm running at the moment, then click the subscribe button, which is down below. And click on also the bell, which is a notification, so any new videos that I launch will pop up on your YouTube channel for you to watch at your leisure. So I hope you've enjoyed today, and hope to see you again soon. Bye.